Friends, Romans, countrymen, lend me your ears. Hello, everyone. You are tuned to the MC Lars podcast. This is episode 95. It is June 22nd, 2020, and the summer is flying by. Things are relaxing with the corona, but are they? I don't know what to believe. People are like going to gyms, but then people are getting sick. I don't know. All I know is that I'm grateful that I'm healthy, my family's healthy, and hopefully you guys are healthy and everyone you know is healthy. And I've been doing a lot of work to try to stay productive. I've been doing Sunday switch days where I'm streaming on Twitch. I'm bringing back 27th Street, working on new music, new videos, trying to make the best of this quarantine. This is episode 95, and this is a very special episode because this is a conversation I had with a friend of mine who is a close internet email friend since like 25 years ago, since 1995. So it's kind of cool how that lined up numerically. I'll talk more about it in a bit. But before we get into that, let's kick off the episode, as we always do, with Letters to Atlas. This is a message that Jared and Michelle Way left, giving Atlas a shout out. Is he sleeping? Is he pooping? Just checking in. How's a little boy doing? These are some messages that you left. Wishing our little baby boy the best. Now it's time for Letters to Atlas.
Please leave a message after the tone.
Hi, Atlas. I'm calling for Jared and Michelle Way. We just wanted to welcome you to the world and tell you what awesome parents you have, and we can't wait to see the nerd that you become. Hope you have a great life.
Thank you, Jared and Michelle. That was super tight. If you want to leave Atlas a message, that's our son who was born May 2nd, you can call the secret number. It's 510-463-4237. Again, that's 510-463-4237. And not only will Atlas hear the message, it will be on the podcast. So leave a message to our son if you want, and we'll play it, and that'll be tight. Okay. Now it is time to shout out the Patreon Larsens. I am finishing up the Marvel Comics MCU Marvel Cinematic Universe songs. I've got the Spider-Man song dropping this week and the Doctor Strange song. I'd made an album about the books and stories from the Bible, which the Patreon homies are going to get mad early before everyone else. But I want to shout out the Patreon Larson. Shout out to the new ones, Sean, Luca, and Dead Pirate Danku, who actually signed up after the Twitch stream yesterday. And shout out to the old ones, William, Gianna, and Phil. Y'all are keeping me going. Patreon.com/MCLarge. You get access to the entire back catalog. You get merch. You get shout outs, you get instrumentals, you get essays, you get behind the scenes videos. It's just tight. Okay, let's get into it. So today's episode is with Doug Burke, aka Phone Freak. And we met through our shared love of prank calls. We recorded this right at the beginning of the lockdown. And he works on the Upper Peninsula in Michigan. And he's a stand-up comedian and a podcaster, but he has a day job working for the school system. So on the podcast, we talk about our cassette collection, our tape trading back in the day. We talk about our memories of we would send each other these tapes. He talks about how he discovered me online, and then we would email each other and we would send each other art and mixtapes. And we build this strong friendship just through email and our love of rare underground tapes. And we never met in real life. We actually never talked on the phone. So this was the first time I actually saw his face. Him and a friend of mine, Chris Van Horn, who we talk about, who was part of Latrine. Chris got me into Insane Clown Posse years ago, in 95, and I tried to get Doug into ICP. And even though he was from Michigan, he talks about how certain things he was into, certain things were not. But this dude made a tape. It's called Phone Freak, was his artist name, and the album is called The Telephone Experience. And I remember he always used to say he had two career goals: to be a cartoonist and to be a professional phone pranker, because the Jerky Boys could do it. Hey, why not? But that inspired me, having this friend online who was very receptive and supportive of my art and my love of weird music and prank calls, and who made his own prank calls. So you can find his album on the Phone Losers prank call media pack, phonelosers.com/torrent. It's the 2020 media pack, and this is on it. What I like about his tape is that it is not a typical prank call tape. He's nice. He talks about this in the interview. He called people trying to give him a hard time, but he ends up just being strangely, awkwardly nice. And so it's a funny. Like, he says he didn't think it's that funny, but I think this tape is so great because it's reflective of the love of just doing something, creating something DIY, not caring if it was like going to be platinum record, but having fun with it. But also just like, it's a very like unorthodox prank call tape because the pranks are all like weird and discursive, and like, he'll be like, okay, I hope you have a good day. Like, he's very genuine and sweet, and he throws people off. So we're going to end the interview with a track I did called Funky Phone Freak, where I recorded his pranks and I play guitar over the Kick the PA, Korn and Dust Brothers track, which is a song from the Spawn soundtrack. And I thought the breakbeat was tight. So I took it. I use that breakbeat a lot on a lot of my songs in middle school. But anyway, that's the song that we end with. But also what's interesting is we talk about sobriety. And I know a lot of like comedians have podcasts where they talk about sobriety and they go on and on and on and on. But, you know, me as a sober person who just had a 4-year anniversary, holler, it's cool to talk to other people who have found their sobriety. And we had an intense email friendship like when we were kids. Like, it's hard being a kid, but like in the early ages of the internet, it was really fresh to meet people like Doug. And I feel like some people you are destined to meet. He tells a story. I'm going to wrap up this intro quickly, but tells a story about how he was at Hot Topic and a friend of his, like a punk rock friend of his, was working there and they were playing Hot Topic is Not Punk Rock. And Doug was like, wait, I recognize this voice. And the guy's like, yeah, it's MC Lars. So Doug gave him my t-shirt, the first shirt I ever made. It had like a picture of me with a gas mask, and on the back it said, I'd like to sing a song called the T-Shirt Song. Move over, MC Hammer. So, so this is my interview with a dude I was happy to meet with and connect with on the internet. I ask him a lot of questions about driving the school bus. That becomes like a third of this. And we talk about Phantasm a lot, his favorite movie. And the last thing is he asked me about any shows that were canceled, and I say, well, only one was, but I am playing a show in Philly in late June. That's not happening. So for context, the Philly show, Too Many Games with Twisted and Schaefer the Dark Lord, that is postponed for now. As for shows, I'm playing at Con on the Cobb in October outside of Cleveland. And that's it. I might have a show in Sacramento like later in the year, and I might have a New Year's show. But, you know, things are still weird, man. But the Nerdcore 2021 tour is being booked. It's going to kick off in Rochester in March next year. So stay tuned for that. Wow, this is a long intro, but I wanted to give context for this exciting reconnection with an old friend from a quarter of a century ago, Doug Burke, aka Phone Freak. Check it out, y'all. I'm glad this is the first time we've talked in real life on video.
Yeah, and it's the first time we've talked in years, like other than email and stuff like that, yeah.
Can I talk about the prank call stuff, or do you want to keep that private?
We could talk about anything and everything you want to talk about, buddy.
You and I connected because we traded tapes back in the day through the internet.
Correct. 1995, and I think I sent an email to you in the end of 95, beginning of 96.
Oh my gosh.
And that's where we connected. We were pretty inseparable, I think, through email and whatnot for quite a while.
And we sent a lot of tapes and art and stuff back and forth over the years. And your encouragement always meant a lot to me, man. I wanted to say that, and I still appreciate you.
Likewise, man. I was very much the same feeling on my end, man. Like, you were somebody who I didn't really get to see. We met at a time that most kids nowadays aren't gonna understand, because we still had dial-up phones. We didn't have cell phones. We had dial-up internet, and we didn't have the capability that you and I are talking to each other right now back then. We just had email, snail mail, and I remember we got the internet, I think, in 95 at our school, at our middle school, and they had to explain to us what, this is back like during Netscape days. Yeah, and Jerky Boys was really popular, NWA was really popular, and I remember falling in love with all of these different aspects of pop culture, and when I figured out what the internet was, the first thing I did was start searching for the things I loved. I really loved Guar back then, and I loved prank phone calls, and yours was the first, I think it was the first and only site at that time that came up for prank phone calls. The art of prank calls, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, and it was because I was hosting on my mom's account and early HTML, and it was in a directory of internet sites. Like back then, like an actual yellow pages of URLs.
Lycos and I remember like that. Yours was the first one to come when you typed in prank call into a search engine. Your page was the first one to come up, and I remember it being littered with all of your Microsoft Paint artwork, which still to me,
right.
Your artwork has advanced, but it still has that same, like kind of like The Simpsons. Like The Simpsons, you could tell in the early seasons compared to now, where it looks similar, but it's refined itself a little bit.
That's very nice. Thank you, Doug. I always appreciated your artistic ability and your attention to detail, and and your taste. And you would send me some of your pranks and some of your mixtapes and stuff, and like I still have all that stuff, and I think it's tight.
I do too.
I think it's tight.
I will say thank you, but I have every prank call tape that you and I traded. I have every prank call tape I traded with Chris from Latrine.
What other ones do you remember?
I remember Phone Losers of America was a big one. I remember because I wanted to hear those guys and I could never get a hold of him. I loved your interview with him.
Oh, thanks for listening.
Yeah, it was awesome, man. I love stuff like that brings me back to a simpler time, because now I'm less than a month away from 40 and everything just feels just not as cool as it used to feel back then. But yeah, like he was a big one I tried to track down, and I ended up getting, I think, a copy of his tape from you. I got the bulk of my collection, I think I got from you. Did
you see, Doug, that he put out the torrent of like all the tapes?
No, did he?
So there's like a 200 gigabyte torrent where I sent that guy Brad all my collection, and he digitized it and put it online. So it's big, but it's all there, man.
Dude, now I gotta find that website. I want to go back and listen. Because that's what I've been doing lately. Is I've been re-listening to stuff I love, the Ball Busters, the old Jerky Boys, but Musashi tapes. Oh my God, I forgot. Those still hold up for me, man. Some of the Jerky Boys not so much, but Musashi tapes is pretty hardcore, good hold up.
Where did you grow up? Did you grow up in Michigan?
I did. I grew up in Kingsford, Michigan. It's a small town in Upper Michigan. And then around the time when I started talking to you is when we moved to Florida. And I spent 24, 25 years in Florida, and then I moved back here.
What brought you back to Michigan?
I could tell you a lot of different things. Things I've told people over the years, but the reality is I had a really bad drug problem, and it got to the point where it felt like every day it's like that Nine Inch Nails song. Every day is exactly the same. And that's kind of what it felt like. I felt like I'd wake up at the same time, smoke a couple cigarettes, go to work, come home, get high, and spend the rest of the evening, rinse, repeat, do it the same day. After 2 or 3 years of doing that, I got fed up, and I kept telling myself, you listen to podcasts every day. Like you love comedy, and you listen to like all these different comedians' podcasts. Like, this is something you should probably try and do. If you don't do it now, you're never going to do it. And I think that was my way of getting myself off my ass, because when I'm not in an environment where there's addicting things that I'm addicted to, then there's no chance for me to even bother scraping. To me, it's like a fight or flight fight with the idea that you have to go cold turkey. And that's kind of what I did. I left, and I was going to go to LA. I drove to LA, got to LA 2 days after I left Florida, and I realized that I didn't understand anything about having to move out on my own. I didn't realize how expensive it was to live in LA. And I basically I had all my family was up here, and everyone's like, you know what, you need to just kind of clean out and get straight, come up here. And that's kind of what I've done. I've just kind of changed shit around, got a decent, honest living that I make now. And I'm just kind of reconnecting with everybody. That's pretty much the last 2 years.
That's awesome, man. Congratulations on that. You made good choices.
Thank you.
And for me, I've been sober about 4 years.
It's really bizarre when I think about, I have a 12-year stretch of my life where I was smoking crushed up pills out of Coke cans in trailer parks. It's bizarre to think about it, because it's not something you ever think you're going to get into as a kid. And then when you're in it, you don't really know anything else other than wanting to meet the fix. And then once you get out of it, like you said, I'm only 2 years sober from pills. I'm over a month sober from alcohol completely. And it sounds ridiculous because when I was in that state of mind, I hated people who would tell me like, "Oh man, being sober is where it's at, bro. You got to be high on life." And now I'm one of those fucking people.
That's dope.
Like I eat better. I walk to work every day. I hit the gym. Like I never thought I'd be that kind of person, but I am.
Good work, Doug. And I saw your Instagram post, you working out. I was like, hey, proud of this man.
Never thought in a million years that would be me. Holy moly.
And then you live longer. That's the thing.
Well, that's the thing nobody really tells you, I think. Well, no one's going to tell you, but opiates, in my experience, didn't make me really want to live a life. It just made me want to numb everything out. After a while, that's what it became. And then after a while of numbing things out, it became... how can I stop from hurting when I don't have enough of what I need to numb things out? And then it just becomes a cycle where you're doing shit you never thought you'd do in a million years just to get your fix, and I don't have that anymore. Like I'm actually saving money. I'm doing like now I actually feel like I want to live life. Before I didn't want to. Now I do.
Are you still drawing and doing art?
I haven't drawn in a while. I get a lot of shit from people about it, my folks especially, but it's there's a lot of things I'm just dipping my toes back into the water, finding my confidence again. Like I've tried to draw in the last year or so, and every time I do, I crumple it up and throw it away. I don't like it. That's when you bring up the prank call tapes. It's like I don't ever want to listen to those ever again. I felt like I was just calling people and trying to fake having a decent conversation. Like I had all these ideas that I wanted to do that were funny and they were kind of raunchy. And then once I'd get somebody get on the phone, I'm like, I don't want to be an asshole to this person.
You're too nice, right?
That's you paid me a compliment when I sent you that first cassette tape. You're like, this is really, and then you wrote a review and you're like, this is really clean. He hits the mark. He's honest and humble about himself. I'm like, I'm not hearing the same person that you're hearing, but Godspeed, man. I appreciate the love.
You weren't cruel to people. And that was like, it's a fine line, right? Because like Phone Losers, he's funny because he's never mean. He just riles people up, right? That's like, the fine line.
Yeah, he screws with people. He's like he's the perfect original troll, I think.
Right. I remember years ago we were talking about your plans, and you talked about you wanted to be a professional prank caller.
I'm lucky if I have enough ambition to force myself to go to the gym. My only dreams now is to just kind of keep on the path that I've been living. Like I think it sounds cheesy as every word comes out of my mouth, but my dad and I didn't talk for like 8 years during that period. And now my dad is like my best buddy. Like we talk about movies that we love. I turn him on to TV shows that he gets hooked into. We do more things together now. And I think that's kind of my goal. Like, I don't know if I have a career goal just as much as I want to spend as much time with somebody that I wasted so much of it not spending with, you know what I mean? If that makes any sense.
When you're young and you see older people acting a certain way, you don't ever think about how it might be when you're older. You think, oh, I'll never be like that. And then one day you wake up, you're like, oh, going to the gym makes me happy. Eating healthy makes me happy. Hanging with my dad makes me happy. These are like, that's kind of cool thing about life, that like profoundly what drives us changes. So it's never going to be boring if you can be in that mind state, right? You feel me?
Exactly, man. Exactly. And I see it with your dad too. I mean, I don't know. It's been a while since we've talked, but like it seems like you've got that same thing with your dad, where you take him on too. I don't know if you still do. I knew he was coming on and opening for you, but I think that was awesome too. You know, I think if you find common ground with the people who made you, especially at a point in your life when you understand what they went through and what you're going through and what you want, I think there's nothing better. Like, I think it's bizarre to me that my dad's my buddy, but we talk to each other every day on the phone now and just share stupid jokes with each other. It's not something I ever thought I'd want it, but it's something I have, and I kind of don't want to let it go right now.
Well, it's something that your sobriety has brought you, right? In a way, or have helped with.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
You're saying that you're helping him with stuff with the coronavirus stuff. Like, how's all that going?
It's okay. I'm just, my mother just got done. She just had cancer cut out of her, and she's better and all that. But I mean, since that started, I started going there every weekend. They live about an hour from me now, and my brother lives about 2.5 hours away from them, so I just kind of would go up every weekend and take care of them, do it if they needed anything done, eat a free meal, get my laundry done by my mom, which it's a trade-off, it's a good trade-off. And anything, he's like, with helping my mom out, like, it took a lot out of him, so I kind of I go up there, and if there's anything he needs done or she needs done, I try and take care of it for him.
What part of Michigan are you living these days?
I'm living an hour away from the exact same place I first started talking to you when I left Michigan. I'm in very upper Michigan. I'm about, I want to say 50 to 100 miles away from Marquette, Michigan, which is where like the big Northern Michigan University is and the Great Lakes and all that, Lake Superior. And I'm about 2 and a half hours away from Green Bay, Wisconsin.
I heard it's beautiful up there. Super beautiful.
I'll tell you, it is the best. Well, not so much spring anymore because we have snow all the way until summer, it seems like now. But best summer I've ever experienced since moving back here. And it's also the best fall. Snow, it's overrated. I could do without snow any day. It's weird to go from like a place like Florida where you wore a t-shirt and shorts every day, and now you have to like buy a completely different wardrobe just to stay warm. It boggles my mind.
I found a lot of people. It's funny because you were in Fort Myers, right? Is that where you were?
Yep.
I was there for a show recently, and a guy who was my Uber driver, he was down there for the winter, but he was from what's it called? The Bear Dunes National Seashore near Traverse City, and he'd spend his winters in Fort Myers doing Uber, and then this summer season he'd be up in Traverse City renting canoes out. Wow, so are you near the Hiawatha National Forest?
The Hiawatha, that's about a 4-hour drive away from me, but it's beautiful. I've been out there. It's absolutely gorgeous.
Man, that's one of those places that I've always been curious about. Or how about, have you been up to Copper Harbor?
Not in a while, but I have. It's gorgeous there. Anywhere in that particular area before like you get to the Mackinac Bridge, you're just going to see some of the best scenery, the best just scenic overlooks as you drive through that entire area. It's beautiful.
So the Mackinac Bridge is the bridge that connects it physically. Were you ever a juggalo? Were you into ICP ever? Or
there's a handful of songs that I liked because you had sent me. That's the other thing is it wasn't just at a certain point. It wasn't just prank calls that you and I were trading. It was music,
right,
and movies too. I know I have it somewhere in a box, but I have a VHS tape that you'd recorded of you and your friends doing sketches in high school. And then there were times where you were trying to make prank calls to the radio, and you'd be talking to me as if I was in the room, and then pranking radio stations and stuff. I had those.
That's so weird.
At the time it wasn't though. It felt like I had a pen pal. We're teenagers.
Yeah.
And then I have it. I have a CD somewhere. I wish I could find it, but it had Insane Clown. You would send it to me. It had and you did the artwork and all that too for the album. It had Insane Clown Posse, incredibly eclectic mix. Insane Clown Posse, Helmet, Head PhD. Was it Head PD or Head PhD or
Head PE?
Head PE, King Missile, and then you had a DC Talk song on there, which I'm like, wow, like he's into a lot of different stuff. I guess I got to check this out, man. And then you wrote a song about me.
Was it some of your calls and I was playing guitar? Was it that one?
Yeah, you're playing guitar, playing some of my calls, and then you'd start. You had lyrics to it too, which it always made me chuckle. Like, Doug, he's a cool guy. Doug, he's my friend. He really likes. You had this breakdown where you came. He really likes making prank phone calls. I'm like, wow, okay. No one's ever put that much thought into me.
Some OG flavor. Yeah.
When I left Michigan, right when we started talking for the first time, and we kept in touch for a little while after I'd left, after I moved to Florida. But I knew you were doing well because I had a buddy of mine who's still a good friend of mine today, John Capozzo, and he worked with a bunch of other friends. I used to work at in Fort Myers. I worked at this place called the Edison Mall. Well, it's a mall. And I worked at EB Games, and then I also worked in this smoke shop that my buddy John ran. And before he took over the smoke shop, he was working at Hot Topic. Oh. And there was a dude named Billy. And this is before, this might be right when you released the Hot Topic song, because I walked in, there's this dude named Billy that was working me on the counter, and he had a shaved head, but he had one of those glued, spiked up punk rocker mohawks, kind of like, what's his face from Rancid, and he wore safety pins in his ears and his lips, and like just a dude who did not care. And I walked in and heard the Hot Topic song that you had done, and I'm like, this guy sounds familiar to me. Like I know this voice. And Billy looks up and he's like, yeah, this is MC Lars. He's the shit. And I'm like, I fucking know that guy. And he's like, no, you don't. I'm like, dude, I knew him when he went by MC Lars Horace. I could tell you why he goes by MC Lars Horace. And I have original cassette tapes. And at the time, I still owe you $25, by the way, because I had a T-shirt of you in a gas mask that said MC Lars Horace, and on the back it said MC Hammer can't touch this, I think.
Yeah, it's a move over. Move over, MC Hammer, right?
That's what it was. That's what it was.
Yeah.
And I had that T-shirt and I had outgrown it, and I brought it in to show him. He's like, "Oh my God, this is the coolest thing ever." I'm like, "It's yours, bro." And I'm like, "I never did pay Andrew for that shirt."
Well, that you are forgiven, and that is so sweet. I knew that story, man. That's very touching.
It was one of those small world kind of things where it just made me smile. I'm like, good for him, man. That dude is doing what he talked about doing and what he wants.
Thank you, Doug. I appreciate that, man. And I also, what was I going to say? I also always wanted to try to get you on a guest list to like shout you out at a show. But we never connected. We always missed each other.
You always would put me on the Warp Tour. Whenever you came through Orlando or West Palm, and
it's far, right?
It's not. It was not that it wasn't far, and not that it certainly wasn't worth the drive. But at that time, I had a car that was just a piece of crap that I didn't even trust me to get to work, and I felt bad. Like I just kind of felt like at that point in life, I'm an adult. I shouldn't have these problems. Everybody else is driving around and having fun, and I didn't know how to. I just didn't know, like, it wasn't just you. It was my cousin was in a band that was going on Warp Tour at that time too, and he was like, "You got to come down and see us in Orlando." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know how I'm going to get there
or get back." Right, most importantly.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly.
So when I was at Fort Myers for this, we played this thing the library hosted downtown in December. It was like they were doing like a mini Comic-Con thing, but I got to go to the Edison Ford Museum and house there, and that was cool. They decorated like Christmas, and I didn't realize that. Yeah, it was like called like the Edison Estates. Do you know what I'm talking about?
The Edison Ford Winter Estates. They were best friends in life, and I've been to them many times. That's biggest tourist attraction to Fort Myers that we have is that, and the fact that the first 15 minutes of George Romero's Day of the Dead is filmed in downtown Fort Myers.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, if you go back and watch the first 15 minutes, there's an overhead shot of the main strip of downtown that looks nothing how it looks today. It was completely barren, and everybody that was zombies in the opening parts of the movie were all locals who answered to a radio call that he went on the radio and talked about it, and it was just locals who showed up, got makeup put on them, walked around downtown. But yeah, the Ford Edison Ford Winter Estates have been there since as long as they were there, and every Christmas they deck it out with lights. They make that strip McGregor Boulevard. They make it look gorgeous with lights, and it is cool. It's cool to go through Ford's home, but it's really cool to go through Edison's lab, I think, and see all the stuff that he created. Yeah.
Because all the stuff, because there was so much money, because rubber was such a amazing import, and they were the fact that he was able to make it very able to use for tires and stuff like that was cool, showing all his experiments. It's pretty tight.
Yeah, I used to love going there as a kid, and then as I got older, I had friends who were tour guides, but it just, you live around it. To me, it's like Disney World. Everybody made a big deal about Disney World. By the third trip to Disney World, I'm like, I'm good. If they if they somehow come out with another park like Star Wars based, I'll think about going. But
how would you typify Floridians versus people from Michigan? Like, because you've lived in both places, are they different? Like, is it different kind of?
Very. The biggest difference, some of the biggest differences is food. Florida, you had such a wonderful cultural melting pot of Cuban, Dominican, Puerto Rican. And you'd have Japanese and Chinese, all different provinces, and you always had like really good food. My favorite place to eat in Fort Myers before I left, I would go there every year for my birthday, was a place called El Gaucho Inca, and it's a husband and wife couple opened this place up, and either she's Peruvian or she's Argentinian, and he's either Argentinian or Peruvian. One is one and one is the other, and they mesh all of the recipes their grandmothers had, their moms had, and they had this beautiful fusion of just amazing Argentinian and Peruvian food. And then you come up to Upper Michigan, and we teeter on Wisconsin in just about any which way you go. So it's a lot of cheese, a lot of fat, a lot of fried foods. When I moved here, I was 228 pounds, and I am now, I think I'm 315 now. Like I put on more than that. I've lost more since going to the gym, but the food up here is just a detriment to most people's health because there's nothing fresh, you know?
And also, do you think people drink more in like Michigan or Florida?
I read something recently that said Michigan has become the state that's out drinking Wisconsin. Like it used to be, Wisconsin used to hold the record, I think, for how much they could put back as far as a United States state can go. But Michigan, we've toppled them now. Like I literally live I live in my apartment building. If I look to the right, I can see a bar. If I look straight ahead, I can see 2 bars, and if I look to my left, I can see a 3rd bar. Or a 4th bar. It's nothing you got one grocery store and everything else is bars. Bars are bar and grills, and a lot of like microbreweries and stuff like that too.
So it's the socializing when it's cold. It's a place to go and see your friends too, which is huge. Like in England, right? Especially Northern England, it's so cold. It's part of the culture. Is that hard not drinking, honestly, or you're figuring it out?
Easiest thing I've ever quit. Next to cigarettes.
You quit cigarettes?
Yeah, quit cigarettes about 2 years ago. And that I thought was going to be a lot. I thought that was going to be a lot worse. It took me a while to finally do it, but you get tired of waking up, hacking up a lung. You get tired of smelling all over. You get tired of your fingers being yellow. And when the prices went up to they're like $9 a pack here, it's like, who am I doing this for at this point? It's not doing me any good. So that was easy to quit.
What are they in Florida?
Florida, they were like $4.55.
How has the reaction been to the Corona stuff up in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan?
My knowledge of other people's lives and where they live is based solely on podcasts, like Big J Okerson, Dan Soder. I listen to those guys quite a bit, and same with Out West. But to me, it always felt like Florida, California, New York. It felt like people were a little bit like. People kind of lived in a controlled chaos, and people here where I'm at in Michigan have never really had to go through that. So it's right. I work with a guy who it seems like every day since this has been going on, he's like, I don't know how to handle this. I don't know what we're going to do. We got toilet paper shortages and this and that. And to me, I'm like, I've lived through 5 hurricanes. Like I've seen people be unprepared, and then I've seen people learn from their mistakes of not being prepared. Like this is just another hurdle that Mother Nature's thrown us to. You know, I like to think it's the same all over, but you know, there are people here who are genuinely scared. It's honestly hard to decipher what's real and what's not real anymore, based on how the media has not just the media, politicians obviously too, but with Facebook and everything that keeps us so connected. It's hard to distinguish fact from fiction. That's why I don't really go on. I don't have Facebook anymore. I don't really read the news because it's like you get one person telling you one thing and another person telling you another. It's like, what am I going to worry about this for? The only thing I know for sure is I'm going to be dead one day, and none of this is going to matter except what I leave behind. So I'm not going to spend my life freaking out over it until I'm told I absolutely have to.
What do you think happens when we die?
I don't know where I stand on it currently. It's certainly changed over the years, but one thing that's always stuck in my mind is Kevin Smith, when he talked about his mother dying for like 2 minutes on the operating table and then coming back, and the way he described talking to her, like, what was it, now that you've been there and you're back here, what do you want more? And she said, I'd rather be back there. Like, I don't know if I saw pearly gates and I don't know if I saw angels, but I know I felt the feeling of every burden and every weight that I had throughout life just didn't exist anymore. It was just relaxed. This is what you've worked towards. And I like to think that that's what happens, but I'm not completely sure.
Yeah. Do you believe in a higher power?
I believe in I don't know if I believe in a higher power in like a supernatural metaphysical sense. I definitely believe that we have the capacity to be a higher power to ourselves. That's something I'm just starting to learn now. But I think everybody's different though too. You got people like my folks who were raised a certain way, and the idea of God and Jesus being the Savior and that is kind of ingrained in them. It's what they know, and I get that. And to me, if regardless of what you believe, if it helps you sleep at night, if it helps you not be a dick to somebody, if it just makes you a better person, Mazel tov, man. All praise be.
That's tight. Explain that, what you said, being a higher power to yourself.
Well, I think a lot of people, I tried NA in the beginning when I was starting to get clean, and I've tried AA, and not that I wouldn't say that they don't work. They work for a lot of people, but for me, every time I sat in a room and listened to somebody else's story, I hate to say it because you're not supposed to bring judgment to it, but I would listen to it and I'm like you are at the root cause of all of this. Yes, you have an addiction and it's a monkey on your back, but at the end of the day, you have the choice to say I've either had enough or I haven't, or I want to keep going. And for me,
Right.
I didn't realize that until like a year after not doing pills. Like it took about a year for my mind to get right and how to readjust to having emotions. But at the end of it, every time I'd be in a meeting and I listen to stuff like that, I'd think in my head, you could stop this at any time. You don't need to be in this meeting. You know what the problem is. You know how to fix it. Do you want to continue talking about your problems or do you want to do something about it? And that's kind of, it takes a little while. Sometimes it doesn't happen at all for anybody. But for me, in my case, it took quite a while to kind of take ownership of that. And I think that's kind of like being your own higher power, just recognizing the problem, realizing what you have to do, and just not being. I curse way too much. I caught myself because when I listen to your podcast, I listen to you say heck, and I'm like, okay, I'm going to watch my mouth, and not out of nothing more than absolute respect for you and whoever may be listening, because I know that there's probably a lot of kids who look up to you and listen to this too. So I try and curb myself on saying that, but yeah, like I don't want to sound like a pussy, but I mean that's kind of what it is. Like we all have the ability. There was a dude I knew who was a youth minister, and I remember him telling me one day, like, the choice lies in your hands. You can choose to have a good day or you can choose to have a bad day, but don't go blaming it on anybody else. Take ownership.
Right.
That's kind of how I look at it.
And I think what's cool about recovery meetings and stuff is that the higher power can be anything. It doesn't have to be a anthropomorphized monotheistic God like from The Simpsons, right? It can be your sense that you want to be with your family or your desire to have a better tomorrow or live for something greater. And that's cool. It can be anything as long as it's positive, or something big. I guess when I think about it, it's like something bigger than you. It exists within you, but it also exists beyond you. Would you agree?
Some might disagree, tempering on retcon afflictions like metachlorians and whatnot. But I mean, I'm not going to get
right.
I'm not going to drag us into that whole rigmarole.
What is like an average day like for Doug these days? Like an average Thursday.
An average Thursday, I would have been just going into work about an hour ago, and I'd work till 10 o'clock, and then I'd come home and, let's see, tonight's Wednesday, so I'd catch up on last night's episode of The Flash, and I'd have a few Diet Cokes, I'd tinker around with PlayStation a little bit, and then I'd go to bed, and then I'd wake up and I would play video games or read a book for about an hour and a half, and then I generally go into work about an hour and a half to 2 hours early, and we got a gym where I work, and I put my earbuds in and I hit the treadmill for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and then I change out of my clothes, go to work, and kind of do that. Weekends, I don't do anything. I don't work on the weekends, so that's when I drive up to my folks' house and spend the weekend with them, make sure that they're taken care of. And
where are you working these days?
it's weird. Since I graduated high school, that's all I've ever worked for is some school district in some form or another. But I drive bus. Which I'm not doing right now. And then I do that part-time, and then I do custodial work part-time. And that's kind of what, since the coronavirus thing hit, we've been going in and just deep sanitizing everything as best as we can.
And you have like the hazmat suits, or you have gloves on, or like how deep is your protection?
A pair of nitrile gloves.
Okay.
I mean, it's weird because you would think that there'd be something serious for something that everyone's talking so seriously about. But one thing I've learned working in school systems is, depending on where you are, depending on how many kids you have in the area you live in, that's basically what you're going to have as far as what you need to do the job. So Florida, I worked in a school district that had, when I left, 80 plus schools, and they were building more. They've built a lot more since I left. And here it's a small town, high school, middle school, and elementary schools all in one building. It's a skeleton crew of 3 custodians. Wow. So, I'm not saying the name. I'm not saying where I'm at either. Just to cover myself,
Right.
just in case. But it definitely, you see where money is spent and where money's not spent based on the area and the economy that you live in. And here in a small town, we could be doing so much better. We really could.
You're saying with how the state will allocate its
Yeah.
funds based on like resources. It's interesting. What is the craziest thing you've had a kid do on a bus while you said you sometimes have driven buses?
Not so much now, because I when I first moved here, I didn't know how to deal with what was happening. So that's how I got into drinking. Was I figured, well, I stopped doing this and this is legal. So I started spending a lot of time at bars, and I got to know almost I mean, I'm not kidding when I say it's everybody knows everybody type small town. And it got to the point where a lot of the single moms would be on Facebook like, oh, we love I love my kid's bus driver. He's awesome. So I became like Otto from The Simpsons for the first year I did it.
Right.
And now I'm at the point where I'm just, oh, that's Doug. He's the funny guy. He's easygoing. He doesn't tend to yell at anybody, and it's always fun to be on his. I get a lot of crap from other people I work with because they're tired of hearing about how I'm awesome and they're not. But to me, it's easy. It's always been easy to deal with kids. You know, I don't feel like I ever really grew up. Like if you did a tour of my apartment, like I've got Batman statues and Ghostbuster toys everywhere. Like my mentality is very much childlike. So dealing with kids is actually pretty easy. There's a couple of them that you'd like to throw up against the wall or into a snowbank once in a while, but I don't think I've had any kids do anything crazy or horrible on my bus, other than curse. My favorite it sounds horrible to say, but my favorite thing that I loved doing when I first moved here, because I hate the cold, I hate snow, and I started learning how heat conducts itself in cold weather. So when I would drive an early bus and I have kids who would not stop talking or curse or they'd act up, I'd move them behind me. And that would be their punishment, is they'd have to sit behind me. And what I loved doing at the beginning of winter when it would snow is I'd crank the heat up in the bus and I would just let bacon farts just slide out all morning and watch in the mirror as the kid behind me lost his mind trying to figure out what was happening and how he could stop it.
Like what the smell was?
It was the best. He's like, Mr. Doug, did we run over a skunk? I'm like, I don't think so. We would have felt that. He's like, it smells awful in here. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what it is, man. It must be you.
Did they that's a good story. Did they ever throw stuff out the window? Have you ever had kids throw stuff out?
I have had one girl, she's not even going to school anymore, I don't think. But we had this group of kids, these brothers and sisters, who were constantly getting in trouble for truancy and stuff. And the one youngest sister got into a fight with her brother on my bus. Cold cocked him in the face. I saw it happen, and I told her to sit tight while I called an authority over. And before I could even pick up the phone to call, I saw her opening a window, throwing her duffel bag out, and she started just crawling out the side of the window. And that might actually be the craziest thing a kid's ever done on my bus.
Was the bus moving?
No, we were just starting to move, and I'd stopped. So it's not as bad as it was when I was a kid. I did way worse stuff I had water balloon fights on a bus when I was a kid. So it's not like that anymore.
That's distracting.
Oh God, I almost got us into an accident. It was horrible.
How is it hard to back up a bus?
No, I mean, if you practice, to me, it's like anything else. If you practice it, if you take the time to do it and learn how to do it. No, it's to me, it's like parallel parking. You just have to remember that your bus is much larger than most cars, that it has a 20 to 25 foot swing. So when you take turns, you really have to pay attention to your mirrors consistently as you're going, but it's not bad. I tell myself that I can learn how to do anything. My problem is willpower. It took me a while to learn how to do the walk around test for a bus, because I'm not the kind of person who can read something and retain it. Like, I love reading comic books, but I could reread them a million times over, because as soon as I shut the pages, my brain just turns off and forgets everything I just read. And that's kind of how it is with doing stuff like this. I have to do it in repetition a couple times to get it under my belt.
What's a walk around test? It's checking the safety features of the bus?
Before you take your bus out, you have to walk around. You have to make sure there's no leaks, that everything is working order, that it's safe for the road. You check your lights, you check your horn, your turn signals. And when you go to take a CDL test to get your CDL or your passenger school bus endorsement, you actually have to physically do the test in front of a guy who's grading you and interview. he will watch you do your walk around. You have to know a bunch of different names for like different pitman arm, caliper, all this kind of stuff that I didn't know beforehand. And he checks to make sure that you know that stuff, that you're checking to make sure there's no cracks in any of the tubing and all that kind of stuff. Usually it takes about 20 to 30 minutes to do a complete walk around, to do a good walk around. But once you get your license, I'm not going to incriminate myself. There's some you tend to find shortcuts when you're not being graded on your performance. You find shortcuts, but the ultimate thing is that you just making sure that it's good enough for the road, that there's nothing wrong with it.
Have you ever had to switch out a bus because it wasn't ready? And
I've had to switch out because it wasn't ready. I've had to switch out because I've had batteries completely dead on me. I've gotten stuck in snowbanks going to pick kids up. I've had to have my bus pulled out by another bus. Yeah, it's just it's a lot more stringent these days. When I was a kid, we didn't have security cameras on the buses. Now we have like 3 or 4 of them.
Oh, right.
Camera, so they do monitor everything fairly well. But yeah, it's absolute safety features. The one thing they beat into your head when you're learning, you have to do like a 2-day weekend course once a year to get recertified. And the one thing they beat into your head is they're not kids; they're precious cargo. So that's kind of always in the back of your mind. Yeah, I'm driving, but I'm not driving my kids. I'm driving a bunch of other people's kids. So this is to be taken seriously.
My last bus question: where do you gas the bus up? Because I've never seen a school bus gassing up at like a normal gas station.
When I worked in Florida, we actually had bus garages all over the entire county where you could stop. If something happened to your vehicle, you could stop and get it worked on by one of the many mechanics. There was gas pumps. Here we actually have gas cards, and we take it to Christ. We have an account with Christ, and they give us little debit-looking cards, and we just we fill up at the pump, bring the card in, slide it, and you sign a piece of paper, and you're on your way.
How long does it take to fill up a bus, and how often do you have to fill up a bus?
Takes about 20 minutes. Normally, the rule of thumb is don't let your gas tank get under half a tank. So when it starts to reach half tank, we usually fill it up. For me, I have the shortest route of all the drivers, so I'm only on the road for maybe 20, 30 minutes a day. And it's like once every 2-3 weeks I fill up. And it takes about a good 20 to 25 minutes to fill a half a tank up.
That's pretty cool. So what will you do while you're filling up the tank?
Usually I'll sweep out my bus. Kids like to leave garbage on the floor, so I'll sweep it out. And if I've already swept it out and I got nothing else going on, I'll bring up a podcast app and see if there's anything new for me to listen to when I get back to work in the evening. And just check my email and stuff like that.
What's the weirdest thing you found cleaning the bus up?
There's 2 answers to that, one for school and one for bus. The weirdest thing I found in the bus, kids have the weirdest toys nowadays. And to me, some of the stuff that kids have to play with don't even look like toys. And so I just pick up stuff that I assume is garbage. And then the next day, some kid will be like, did you see my twisty, crawly snake thing that was felt? I'm like, it was green and it was more than 12 inches. It was garbage to me. Well, that was my toy. I'm like, okay. Like, that's the weirdest thing. Kids leave a lot of leave a lot of toys. They leave gloves, boots, coats on the bus. Like, that's the other thing I've noticed is kids really don't have respect for their own property because they're not paying for it. So they don't have that concept that like this comes from somewhere. If I lose it, I'll just get another one. It's amazing to me how many laptops and smartphones I see just laying by themselves.
Really?
Oh yeah, it's insane. It's insane to me, the amount of laptops. I walk by iMacs before, and I'm like, I could only ever dream to own an iMac. And then I see them just sitting there flippantly in the open, and no one's claiming it. I'm like, come on, man, this is ridiculous. But that's the bus.
That's crazy.
School, I found used condoms.
Oh,
that's the weirdest one I found at a school.
So are kids more polite to bus drivers or custodial staff?
Some bus drivers may say otherwise, because there are people who they're older. Some drivers are a little bit older than me, and they've already had their kids have come and gone in their life. So now I can't say it for sure, but my perspective on what I see is that some people this is a job, but it's not a job. I don't want to listen to kids screaming all the time. Like, you can get that. I get that just from looking at somebody. For me, it's never been that bad. Like I said, because it's easy to me. It's easy to get along with a kid. You know, it's my personality is very much a kid. So I would say that probably custodians, now that I think about it. But in my experience, to me, it just feels the same. You know, you could definitely tell which adults kids don't like based on how they talk or how they distance themselves. So,
based on how the adults do.
Yeah, there's a lot of kids. There are kids who will verbally say like, "I'm steering clear of Mr. So and So because he seems like he's on a hot page today," and you know, so you get it from that. You can tell which teachers or employees in general get stressed out being around kids, and you can tell the kids that realize that because they're the ones who will try and stress them out more, like digging the knife in the back. They love getting a rise out of people when they can see they can do it. So.
They're like the Bart Simpsons.
Very much so. Very much so.
Yeah. So, Doug, I wanted to end with, I'm going to ask you 4 questions, and I'm going to ask them all now, and maybe like you can think about them if some of them you don't know. So I want to know your favorite band, favorite TV show, favorite movie, and favorite comic, like stand-up comic.
Stand-up comedian. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you, favorite movie has not changed at all in my lifetime, but the only thing that has changed is I stopped telling people it was my favorite movie because everybody would ask me about it in my 20s. I had all the posters framed and hung on the wall. I had toys and models from the film, but I love Phantasm. And I stopped telling people that because anytime people would come into my house and see the posters, the first thing they would ask is, what's that about? And then I'd get into a long explanation, kind of like a Star Wars or a Battlestar Galactica person would get in with somebody who doesn't know that kind of stuff. And you just see the look of lost confusion in their face. I'm like, you know what? This is my thing. I'm just keeping it to myself. But Phantasm is definitely still, the entire series is still kind of my favorite.
How many movies are there in it?
There's a total of 5.
My friend Tim references it in one of our songs. I don't know if you've known the song we did, Escape from Robot Island. He references that movie in it.
I'm going to look it up
on
now.
Radio Pet Fencing.
I'm definitely going to look it up.
He goes, it's about these robots that are going to attack. And he goes, some that will drop you in a chasm, balls that drill you like in Phantasm. And I've never seen it.
That's dope.
So I don't know what's that about?
The first movie of the series is the most serious of the series, aside from the 4th one. As the movies went on, they came out at a time kind of similar to like Friday the 13th or Nightmare on Elm Street, where it started out serious. And then as the movies went on, there's a little comic relief in some of the characters. They kind of became splatter comedies in a way. Right. But each film picks up where the last one left off, which is something that's always kind of stuck with me from the time I was a kid. I always thought that was kind of cool. But they're basically, you see the first movie, it's a kid and his brother, they lose their parents, and his brother is trying like hard to get out of this town, but his brother doesn't want him to leave because he's the only family he has left. They have a buddy named Reggie.
So there's this creepy guy with a floating orb.
Yeah, it's the tall man, Angus Scrim.
Okay.
He basically runs this mausoleum in the first movie, and as the movie goes on, Mike, the youngest brother, he starts to see that something's not right with this guy, this tall guy, and there's a lot of deaths in the town and people are going missing. And you come to find out, I don't know if they really do a good job explaining it in that first movie, but you definitely see it as the series goes on that the tall man lives in this they never really say if it's another planet or a dimension, but it's very similar looking to Mars, the way it's depicted. It's all red and orange. There's low gravity. And what he does is he has this group of minions, little dwarf minions that wear these brown cloaks, and they have almost kind of like, from Star Wars with the yellow eyes. Like
the Jawas.
Yeah. They look a little bit like Jawas, but their faces you can see, and they're like gnarly looking troll-like dwarf creatures. And he has them, every body that comes through the morgue, he has them put into a barrel and sent back to his home planet, and he's turning the bodies of these deceased humans into more of his dwarfy minions. And as the series goes on, like it becomes, Mike grows up throughout the movie as well as all the other characters, and they basically go on like a road trip trying to like find the tall man to bring him down. And the last film, I don't really recall too much because it wasn't Don Coscarelli who wrote and directed it like the other 4. It's okay. It was nice to see a final entry into the series before the tall man actually died in real life. But it's basically like, to me, it's always been a story about a little brother who looks up to his big brother and wants to help him save the world, and he can't even do that. And by the end of the 4th film, you could take it a million different ways, because art is subjective, but I always saw it as with the 4th film was the last film Don Coscarelli did, and he used footage from the original 1970 the first film, I think it was 78, 79, he took unused footage that he'd found and reincorporated it into the fourth film. And it was going to be the last one initially. And the way they kind of interpret it, in my understanding, is that everything that's been happening over the last 4 movies was just a dream that Michael, the young kid, was coping with because his brother and mother and father were ultimately killed in a car accident. And so his entire life, he's created this scenario in his mind that this evil alien is taking away everybody, but really it's just a coping mechanism for a young kid. And I think that's kind of why I like it. I think I grew up thinking a bunch of different things.
Yeah.
And kind of, I don't know. I've got a weird outlook on things. So to me, I like stories that have, I like that kind of stuff.
Do you like that twist?
Yeah, I thought it was cool, and then they're like, well, it wasn't the way we were originally going to end it, and now we're going to make a new movie, and it's like, why? Like, to me, that was a perfect ending to any story. Isn't completing the story. It's giving the story purpose. Like, I love The Sopranos, and I know a lot of people don't like the ending, but to me, I was fine with it. I don't need some big gunslinger walking off into the sunset. I just want a good conclusion to a story, and that's kind of what I felt with that fourth movie. Is it tied everything up nicely? But
Is the fifth like, hey, actually, your dream wasn't a dream?
it wasn't a dream.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it felt like a retcon in a couple different ways. But yeah, that's kind of what it felt like. It's like, hey, no, the last 4 movies weren't a dream; they really happened. So we're going to go ahead and continue the story, and this is going to be how we end it. And I'm like, I mean, if you're happy, you're happy. Whatever. I'll buy the box set.
So you know the movie Who Framed Roger Rabbit, right? Obviously.
One of your favorites amongst heavyweights, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, exactly. Good memory. The book it's based on, it's called Who Censored Roger Rabbit, and the book is very different from the movie. So when Gary Wolfe wrote the sequel, he had the book, the original, since it was so different, is a dream that Jessica has that then made it so retcon the sequel to the book fit in the movie universe, which is different. So it's a similar thing, right? It became a dream of the original story where Roger's a comic strip character instead of a cartoon character. So,
you know, I've never read that, but I've heard that the original source material for that was completely different than what they made.
yeah,
I didn't know that until you just said that, so I thought that's kind of cool.
that's tight.
That's a great movie too.
Yeah, that's a great movie. It holds up.
Okay, so that was favorite movie, favorite TV show, Breaking Bad, pretty much all of that.
Okay.
That stuff I love. There's a lot of shows.
Did you watch El Camino?
I didn't hate it, but I didn't love it. It's not what I expected. It definitely is its own beast of its own, but I wouldn't mind watching it again, but it's not unlike Breaking Bad. It's not one of those things where like you every time I've watched Breaking Bad, I find myself like how I used to feel in my 20s when I'd discover that new band or you discovered that new movie that everybody had known about but you didn't know about.
Yeah.
That's how I felt. That's how I still feel about Breaking Bad and this first season of True Detective. Like every time I watch it, it still feels like I'm watching it for the first time because it's so good.
Right.
And I didn't get that with El Camino. Like I said, I didn't hate it, but it didn't feel the way it used to feel.
Right.
Whereas Better Call Saul, oddly enough, feels as good as Breaking Bad.
Right. Yeah, that universe is so massive.
And it's fascinating stuff. And it's absolutely fascinating stuff. But I mean, I'm quantifying my favorite, that is my favorite show, because that's one that I definitely go back to and try and get people into. But I mean, there's so many of them. I mean, X-Files, you could hit and miss with X-Files. Simpsons, that was the best thing about Disney Plus, was getting to watch all the old Simpsons
yeah.
again.
Yeah. Shout out to them. That's so cool that they've got that there. It's like so much. Brilliant stuff.
I love watching those old episodes, man. Truly some of the best stuff.
Do you have a favorite Simpsons episode?
I do. I couldn't tell you the name of it, but I could tell you why it's my favorite. It's maybe it is the Radioactive Man one where they're filming Radioactive Man and
Fallout Boy.
Milhouse becomes Fallout Boy, and I think it was that one where they're at the bar talking to Mo, and Mo's like, I haven't heard something like that since I was the second Alfalfa, or I was on the Little, something about being in the Little Rascals. He's like, yeah, I was one of the original Little Rascals, and then it cuts to like that flashback footage. He's like, back then, or no, there was a kid. He's like, William Faulkner. You wouldn't think about it, but William Faulkner could write a soot in the eye gag that would just have you in stitches. And then some kid, it was Alfalfa who came and stole Mo's spotlight, and Mo killed him.
Right.
And he's like, it cuts back to the present. He's like, yeah, it's okay. Everything was fine. The studio paid his mother off. He's like, that's just how they did things back then.
Okay, favorite band?
It's a toss-up. As I've gotten older, I've learned to appreciate music in all forms. I like a lot of hip hop. I love a lot of rock. I love a lot of soul music. So there was a period where I would have said Alkaline Trio or Coheed and Cambria, but now my musical taste, it's different every day. Like I listen to more podcasts than anything, but when I do listen to music, I listen to a lot of Atmosphere. I listen to Sage Francis, Doomtree, a lot of independent stuff. I don't know where you are in New York, but there's a hip hop collective out of Brooklyn called Meter Maids that I really enjoy quite a bit.
I've heard of them. I should check them out.
I enjoy those guys a lot. But yeah, I mean, for me, music changes on a daily basis. My mood, my tastes, and there's not a lot of new music that I get into. I try. Like I'll always give bands and artists that I love. I'll always give their new stuff a chance, but a lot of the newer artists, like it just like I'm sure people get something out of Machine Gun Kelly or Cardi B, but it's just not my cup of whimsy, you know.
What did you like about Guar so much, and do you still go back and check them out?
I loved Guar because it was something. As a 15-year-old, I didn't know it was a thing that you could dress up like monsters and spray your audience with blood and play ridiculous music with the most ridiculous lyrics. And as I got older, I genuinely enjoyed the music. My first introduction was seeing how cool the album cover looked and buying it. And then I started to listen to the music, and I'm like, there's some songs in here that I dig. And then I got to see them live for the first time, and I'm like, all right, this is why you love this band. Because they are one of the coolest live. It makes leaving the house worth seeing them. We got
at the Gathering of the Juggalos. We got to watch them from backstage, seeing how the blood was set up, and that was cool. Watching their whole technical thing from the back was awesome. It was pretty cool.
It was weird when I first met them outside of the makeup. Like, just come off, they're covered in sweat with paint, with grease paint all over them and that. But yeah, I would have liked to have seen that too. Yeah. You asked me before if I liked ICP, and I never really answered the question. I do like a few songs. Yeah. That was one of the ones you always tried to get me into, and I think it was The Great Malenko that used the hit off of that album that you had sent me. That was like
Halls of Illusions.
Halls of Illusions. It was the only video I remember ever seeing on MTV at the time, and back when they had dreadlocks. And I remember like one of the lyrics in the song was something about Nintendo. That stuck with me. As the years have gone on, I wouldn't say that I'm a hater of the Juggalos. If anything, I'm more fascinated by them as I've gotten older.
Right.
You asked me what my life goal was, or if I had a dream or something. I would like to go to a gathering of the Juggalos once before I die. Like, they look like a fucking blast to be on.
And you get to see bands like Guar and great stand-up comedy, and it's just like a fun, very scary weekend.
If you look it up on YouTube, I know it's on YouTube. There's two different versions of it, and they're both pretty good. But the one Bobcat Goldthwait did an interview on the Joe Rogan podcast, and then I would think the one he did for Harmontown with Dan Harmon was way funnier. But he recounts a story of being booked at the Gathering of the Juggalos. It was the year that that pop singer got crap thrown at her. I can't think of her name. Tila Tequila. It was that year he had gotten booked, and he tells this story about how there's a clown that goes every year to the Gathering of the Juggalo called, oh God, I can't even think of his name now off the top of my head. Something the clown. I can't think of his name, but if you go on YouTube and type in Bobcat Goldthwait Gathering of the Juggalos, his Harmontown episode will come up, and he tells a 20-minute story about this clown bringing him into the Gathering of the Juggalos on a golf cart and showing him around. He's like, yeah, everybody here loves me. And he says, as he says that, you hear some juggalo in the distance say his name, and he turns, get ready to greet him, and they just whiz a can of Faygo soda and cracks his skull open. And it sounds so horrible, but the way he tells the story and the way he does this guy's voice, like it, I heard that and I'm like, I'd give up my firstborn to be at that Gathering of the Juggalos. It sounded so awesome. That's something I've always wanted to go to, and I do highly recommend you checking it out.
Speaking of stand-ups, favorite stand-up comedian?
When I left Florida, I'll answer it like this. When I left Florida, the reason I decided to go to Los Angeles to try being a stand-up was because at that point in my life, I'd been listening to a lot of West Coast comedy. I didn't care for New York comedy. I didn't really know New York comedy, but I knew the stuff I'd seen didn't really do much for me. And I was listening to a lot of Burke Kreischer. Tom Segura was getting big. Joe Rogan and all that stuff was kind of blowing up. And I fell in love with Joey Diaz and Doug Stanhope. And as I've gotten older, I've grown to realize that I think I like New York East Coast based comedy more than anywhere else in the world. New Yorkers seem to have an honesty about just horse shit, like not taking horse shit, but also calling it out for what it is. And I really kind of respect that. I've over the last few months, I've fallen in love with Big J Okerson, Dan Soder, Luis Gomez, oh man, can't think of his name off the top of my head. No, Joe DeRosa. Most of the comedians that I love are New York based. It's hard for me to wind down a favorite, but I can tell you that the three off the top of my head that I never miss an episode and I constantly stick with them is Joey Diaz, Big J Okerson, and Doug Stanhope. I've seen all three of them live. I haven't seen Big J live, but I've seen Stanhope and Diaz. I haven't gotten to see, but it's a toss up between those three right now. Anyway,
So how would you typify West Coast comics versus East Coast comics? Like, what are some stylistic differences?
West Coast comics, the initial reason I wanted to go out there was because I tried stand-up in Florida for about a year, and the people...
Wow.
Yeah, and I've got all that on tape, and much like my prank call career, it's not that funny. I have a tough time listening to anything with my voice on it. And I tried it for a year, and at that time I was just getting into podcasts. So everything I'm hearing, like Rogan, Kreischer, Diaz, all these guys on the West Coast, Ari Shaffir at the time I think was West Coast, now he's East. But everything I was hearing, the way they were talking about doing shows together at the clubs in town and how it was a camaraderie and a brotherhood, I wanted that. That's the kind of comedy I loved at the time because I didn't get that in Florida. In Florida, it literally is just hot water garbage people doing comedy. There's a couple of good ones that come out of it. But for the most part, local comedy where I was at was a lot of backstabbing, screwing people out of money, screwing people off shows, spreading internet rumors. It's just ridiculous stuff. So I fell in love with West Coast comedy because of that. And as I've gotten older and as times have changed, it seems to me that West Coast comedy, because they're in the heart of Los Angeles and or Hollywood, and with everything going on with Harvey Weinstein and Cosby and all that horrible thing, it felt like comedy was starting to become censored on the West Coast. That's how I hear it in my head as I listen to it. When you hear comedians start to say stuff like, I was going to say something, but I caught myself. The woke culture we're living in, I don't want to get cancel culture. It's like, just say it. Like, to me, if a comedian, the comedian's only job is to attempt to make something funny. And if somebody's offended by it, like, you can't control that. People are offended by the most ridiculous things. So that started to kind of help lose my interest in West Coast, not completely, but like I said, that's why I love New York. Like, you have a melting pot of so many different people and so many personalities and sexualities, and everybody seems to make it work. You know what I mean? And I kind of dig that. I kind of like the fact that, like, based on the comedy I watch on YouTube, like the live podcasts and stuff out at like the Stand or the Creek in the Cave or whatnot, or even the Comedy Cellar, you see that a perfectly mixed group of races and sexualities, and they're all having the same experience. They're laughing. Like, you don't see that. It feels like you don't see that a lot in the West Coast anymore. It just feels like everybody wants to find something new to be offended over. So I don't know. New York and East Coast feels more like they're testing the limits or they're staying true to themselves. That's kind of how it feels on my end.
Is there a stand-up comedy scene up in the Upper Peninsula?
There is in Marquette. I know there is. That's about an hour and a half away from me. And the only reason I know that is because I saw Stanhope last September in Marquette. And the way it was at a little bar and grill place, and the way the girl who was hosting the show was a student at NMU, and she's like, "Yeah, we've got open mics now, like twice a week. We're expanding everything." Like, the way they made it seem was like a lot of these college kids, a lot of people are coming to that area to try their hand at it because they're starting to bring in real names and stuff. So,
do you remember the name of the venue?
It was called the Ore Dock and Brewery. ORE Dock and Brewery. It's basically like a microbrewery, a beautiful old building, and they have all kinds of really neat pop cultural stuff that happens there from time to time.
Doug, I appreciate you doing this interview, and I don't know if you do a lot of podcasts, but it's been great, like, be able to talk about just about everything.
Dude, I 100% agree on this end for sure. I could sit here and talk to you for another hour and a half, man. That's the thing. That's the other thing I've learned as I've gotten older is I dislike having conversations with people unless they're people I know or people I haven't talked to in a while. So like when you
that's fair.
When you propose this idea to me, I'm like, absolutely. Like I've been looking forward to talking to you, man. Like, not even just on my end. Like, it's made me want to like do something different too. Like now that I have a decent microphone and I have an app, like I kind of want to do a podcast, and I kind of want to interview him for my podcast. And I don't know.
Yeah, sure. I'd do it if you want.
Absolutely, man. My brother, when he gave me this mic, he's like, when you and I get together, we laugh for like a good 2 or 3 hours. I'm like, yeah. He's like, we should probably do a podcast together. I'm like, okay. we could figure something out. Like, to me, it costs nothing to sit down and just talk. And I like I said, I enjoy doing it with people I enjoy doing it with. So.
And you're very familiar with the medium.
Yes. The only thing I don't know, like when you told me what I was going to need for this, I'm like, I don't know anything. Like, it's really bizarre because when we first started talking to each other as kids, I was basically building websites for people, and the only way I was building them was I was going to other websites that I really liked of like bands or movies, and I was stealing the HTML. When you'd go to like F whatever it was, you could copy all that.
And just change the tables and stuff. Change
the header, change the color algorithms, all that stuff. And now it's like, I couldn't even tell you how I would even go about trying to build a website. Like, I haven't had a laptop in a long time, and I got this one here to use for this. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, I don't even understand Windows anymore. This all looks so unfamiliar to me.
You're on Instagram. What's your Instagram?
Douglas is dumb. @ Douglas is dumb.
That's what I thought.
Yeah.
Douglas is dumb. Thank you, Doug, for taking time. It's been good. It's been tight.
Thanks for having me. Absolutely, man. I'm pleasure to do it. Happy to talk to you. And like I said, man, once I figure this out, like I do want to have I just want to have another conversation period with you, but I'd love to ask you questions about like what you've been doing, because honestly, dude, one of the things I remember you telling me when we were younger was your love of Weird Al Yankovic. What is it like getting to record a song with Weird Al Yankovic, man? That shit is bananas to me.
That was a life dream. He's very professional, obviously, and very nice. And what's striking by him is he's so humble for having sold that many records, and so kind.
I thought that was the coolest thing when I saw that.
That was a dream come true. That was tight.
There's a handful of people in life, in my life, where I've been absolutely fascinated by and proud of, despite the fact that you lose touch with people as years go on. You are absolutely at the top of the list with 2 other people I know who've went on to do some pretty incredible things with their life. But it's always fascinating. I tell my mom whenever we'd see something or I'd hear you or something like that, I tell mom, like, I know that kid. Like, that was the first kid I was friends with on the internet when we moved from Michigan. She's like, oh, that's nice. Like, it goes right over their heads that like you can graduate high school and do something completely different.
It's generational, right? The fact that we have these friendships that are decades long, across the world.
I was going to say it's the only kind of friendships where technology is a positive. Like, I think a lot of technology is more harmful nowadays, but stuff like this,
it's tight.
Especially with educational stuff that's the thing I love about you the most, is that you've taken something you love doing and made it accessible for everybody. Like, I'll watch Netflix Punisher till the cows go home. I'll watch John Bernthal like murder a ton of people, but at the end of the day, that's not something you can show to kids. And even though I don't have kids, like, I still want kids to grow up in a better world than the one I grew up in. Yeah. And the one I grew up in wasn't that bad, but you're helping contribute to that. So I thank you, man.
You're kind. Thank you, Doug. That's sweet. And that's what I always want to, when I make stuff, I want it to be appropriate for kids. Last question. Do you ever talk to Chris Van Horn from Latrine?
Haven't talked to him in years. He reached out to me maybe a decade ago.
Yeah.
My time frame is very skewed. But he reached out to me and we chatted a little bit. It might've been like before Facebook, MySpace era.
Okay.
And like everything else, just lost touch with him. That's another person who you should get on the podcast. Dude, literally everybody that we talked to throughout the years doing prank calls with, I would love to hear you interview them and just catch up with them. I love that Phone Losers interview so much. It's ridiculous.
And that was fun because we did it in real life. He came to the hotel where I was. That was cool. Yeah, Brad, dude, of all the prank call internet people, his stuff with the FBI and like the YouTube channel, he's really doubled down on it. And I'm I'm kind of proud of him because it's like very unconventional. Like some of his stuff is better, I think, than some of the Jerky Boys and his characters. It's like he's like a Jedi master prank call, social media genius kid.
I agree, man. I agree. That's the weird thing after Jerky Boys had come out to button it up with prank calling. I could speak only for myself, but I remember when they came out, you had them, you had the Bum Bar Bastards who did the Tube Bar stuff. You had the Ball Busters, 976 Girls, Telephone Head, and Musashi Tapes. Those are the 6 mainstream prank call albums I remember buying at a physical store, where everything else I had to get bootleg copies of. I was trying to think of the name of somebody. There was a prank call group that was featured on a few sites back in the day, and they charged $5 for a cassette tape. And I remember cutting them a check and never getting the tape. To this day, I still haven't gotten the tape.
Oh, that's horrible. The Crank Callers of America.
That's who it was. You were talking to Brad about them.
They never sent the tape?
Never sent their cassette tape. My dad had to write me a check out because I was still I was 16 or 17, and he kept hounding me. He's like, "No, a $5 check hasn't cleared." And all I could think was like, "I'll give you $5." I didn't realize how banking worked. And he's like, "You better get a hold of those guys."
Oh, so they never cashed it. They
eventually did. After like a month and a half of me hounding them with emails, they cashed it, and then they never sent me the tape. So
wow.
But I heard you guys talking about it. I was like, oh, wow, you just like opened up the floodgates of memories that I hadn't thought about in forever.
It's because we did the parody of the parody tape.
Yep.
That's what's up.
I also remember you were asking if I remember who I remember prank call was. Like if there was somebody, you remember was it Leroy Mercer?
Yeah.
Tom Mabe, Jonathan Winters had a prank call album out that I thought was kind of funny as a kid.
It was like messages he left on people's answer machine.
Blue squirrel, red chuck to gray squirrel, red chuck to gray squirrel. We're over here in the shit, gray squirrel. Like it'd just be random messages he would call people with. I loved a lot of that stuff. And like I said, Musashi Tapes is one for me that still holds up. And the Ball Busters still hold up, even though a good chunk of that was staged.
Those were staged, you think?
I know they were staged because I built you remember the Telephone Head, the orange cover?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
You and I had a conversation through email, and I remember you saying like, I don't like that album because it's fake. And I remember asking you like, how do you know it's fake? And you're like, you can hear people from the 976 Girls, you hear people from the Ball Busters, you can hear their voices. And then years later, I had a prank call website. I think that I was trying to do tape trades like you were. And the guy, the kid, I should say, he's younger than me, Wade, I want to say Milbone. I might be mispronouncing his name. I can't remember his last name, but this kid, Wade, who was the Telephone Head, messaged me, and he's like, look, man. Right. He's like, I saw what you wrote. He's like, I'll tell you the whole story. He's like, but that stuff wasn't fake. He's like, there was a couple of them that were fake, and he says, and he told me what they were, and it was the Ball Busters. He says, he called the Ball Busters. He had me build his first website for him back in early 2000, and he sent me, I have them somewhere, I'd have to go through, I got boxes all over the place, but he sent me the original letter from Dilligaff Records that approached him wanting to buy the tapes. It had another contract, a copy of a contract he sent me. He sent me news articles from his hometown when he became big from the prank call tapes. And then he'd send me correspondence from like the Ball Busters that he was having where they're like, yeah, not all of them are going to be hit and misses. That's why we got to do a couple stage ones. So I know that there was a lot of it that was fake.
And that kid, so just to wrap things up, randomly when the torrent, which we're talking about, the Phone Loses America torrent went up, that kid from the Telephone Head emailed Brad Carter and told him this whole story too that you just said.
It was fascinating.
So I wonder if he made any money. Did he make money or not really?
He said that he made some, but not enough, not like what you'd need to like. You weren't making the Telephone Head movie. Like to me, one of the people talk about Troll 2 being the best worst movie. To me, you go back and watch the Jerky Boys movie. That's pretty much. That's a pretty for a kid at that time. I loved it, but you watch it as an adult. Holy wow, what a turd! So he never got that kind of money. Like I remember those guys. Well, I don't know what happened to was it Kamel? Was that his name? Kamal.
Kamal and them, they had a fight, and Kamal did a solo record, then left.
And I don't know whatever happened to him, but I mean, you look at Johnny Brennan, like that dude's a voice on Family Guy. He's a voice in he's still killing the game and doing that stuff.
He had a podcast for a while. Jerky Boys podcast.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was only about a year, but it was cool because it was the stories behind the calls. And
I would love to hear the story behind Pablo Honey. Like that's one that, as a kid, it was the funniest thing. And as an adult, it's still funny, but I could never make 2 cents of what the hell it was. Pablo Honey, please come back to Florida, honey. We miss you. I'm like, okay. Like I don't know what you're doing, but it's awesome. It works for me.
It worked.
Yeah.
Younger millennials, a lot of them haven't heard of the Jerky Boys. It's kind of forgotten. It's a lost thing, for some people.
100% it is. I mean, you also got to think millennials, like the younger millennials, are living in a world where they literally can open up their phone, go into one of 4 to 5 different apps, create their own content, and start their own career if they wanted to. That boggles my mind. When I found out how much certain people were making on YouTube from their channels, I'm like, you got to be shitting me. And that's the thing is like,
right.
I would never do something like that because I don't have the confidence in myself to think I could hold up an entire hour-long episode of whatever I was going to talk about, let alone try and hawk something in advertising sales. But there are people who are making better livings at it than I'm doing with my job. I think it's fascinating, but I also think that that's a big reason, like that post I made on Instagram about the Ball Busters. Like kids will never know what it's like to go to your kitchen and see a phone hanging up with a rotary dial on it. Like that's just
that's true.
That's just not the world we live in anymore.
Douglas is dumb on Instagram. Let's end with a song. I'm trying to think, like, is there any song you want to end with? We could play anything. I was thinking, there's that thing I did with the beats in your calls, but I don't know if you want that on there.
You actually have that still?
I do. Yeah. I call it Funny Phone Freak or something.
If you could take that song and mix it with a Guar song, and then mix it with an MC Lars song, and then mix it with my voice.
MC Guars.
We'll just have an amalgam. MC Guars. I like it. That's cool. What was the one song? Keep Me Hanging on the Telephone. That was the one they used in the trailer, and I can't think of who sang that.
Yeah,
song.
It's a cover of a Blondie song.
Hanging on the Yeah.
What? Who did the L7? I think did the cover.
Yes, you're right. It was L7.
Yeah.
Holy crap! I'm thinking about stuff I haven't thought about in years.
This is a very good soundtrack.
But Helmet is playing with Faith No More in September in Chicago, and I'm going to it.
Oh, what a lineup! I'll just tell a quick last story. I did Warped Tour, and one of the shows was in Alaska, and I was in the van with the guys from Helmet from the airport, and Paige, the singer, told me a story about being on the set of the Jerky Boys movie. How I don't know if you remember when the stuff starts shorting out because the guys wire it wrong. Remember, like the guitar had a spark and a rocket went and almost hit him in the eye, and he jumps back, and they used that take, but like people were afraid that he was going to lose his eye and sue them. But that was a story. He said that was like not meant to happen, and that's why in the movie he looks like he's in pain. So, dude, it's crazy.
That movie. I want somebody, maybe the people who do the podcast, How Did This Get Made? I want a retrospective on...
That'd be good.
I want a retrospective on the Garbage Pail Kids movie, and I want a retrospective on the Jerky Boys movie. How the hell it got made, I want to know. I mean, it's one of the most fascinating, horrible movies to go back and rewatch.
They were capitalizing on it. It was a moment. They were riding the wave, and good for them, right?
I think that might have been the first mullet I ever saw, back when Johnny rocked the mullet.
That movie still is one of my favorites because of just... the moment in time. I've seen it a lot. I bought it on iTunes Movies.
You've got Vincent Pastore, a young Vincent Pastore. Anthony LaPaglia, I think, was in that. You had like a really good cast of people in there. It really was.
Yeah.
It really is a movie made for 13-year-old boys in the 90s. It really is. It holds up like a 13-year-old kid's movie.
Alan Arkin, Ernie Lazzaro, and he's got Academy Award. Not for Jerky Boys movie though. If I ever get up to the Upper Peninsula, I'd love to come visit you.
I would love to see you too, man. I'd love to meet your wife. I'd love to hear all the stories and all the answers to the questions that I have for you. Well,
if you ever do your podcast, I'll be your first guest if you want. I'd be honored to.
It's a deal.
Cool.
Virtual elbow
Boom.
bump.
Yeah, we got to do it. Good luck with all the sanitation. The sanitization.
Likewise, man. You're not doing any shows or anything, are you?
I had one canceled, and my next show is Philly at the end of June, so I'm good. Hopefully, you know what I'm saying. Like our tour ended the end of February. We were so lucky. If we get up to Upper Peninsula, you're on the list.
Absolutely. I will. That's a show I can guarantee you at this point in my life I will make.
That'd be easy.
Try and bring MC Chris with you and bring Action Bronson, and I'll bring everything else.
What a lineup. All right,
Bring
man.
Bam Bam.
That'd be tight. I'll talk to you soon.
Sounds like a plan, buddy. I will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Doug. Bye.
Thank you.
Remember records?
Yes. I was wondering if you had Marilyn Manson there?
Which one were you looking for?
Anyone.
We do stock them, yes.
You do? Do you have any bootlegs?
Not at the moment, no.
Oh, you don't? Do you get a lot of requests for them, or because I know they're kind of satanic in that?
Is there a specific piece you're looking for? Because I'm not here to make more.
Oh, I just wanted to know if a lot of people bought it. No, I was looking.
Very popular. The latest album is in the top 30 on the Billboard charts. Beyond that, I can't help give you any idea of what they are, or who they are, or what they're doing.
Okay, I was looking for a bootleg called Monkey Massacre.
It's not something that I have, no.
All right, thanks anyway. Bye.
Good afternoon, Camelot Music, where nobody knows music better. How can I help you?
Yeah, hi. You know the Jerky Boys, right?
Yeah.
Okay, in the humor section, my friend was telling me that there's a new prank call CD that's similar to him, and he said it's funny. It's called Latrine, the Left Side Tapes, and he told me that it was out in stores, but I wanted to see if you guys had it. Could you maybe check and see if you have it for me? I mean, have it, or?
You're gonna have to repeat it. I can't understand. What were you looking for?
It's an album in the humor section. It's called Latrine, the Left Side Tapes.
Okay, hold on a second.
Okay.
No, I'm sorry, I don't see anything.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry to waste your time then.
That's okay. Thanks.
All right, you take care.
You too, bye-bye.
Bye. Yeah, I just moved here.
Okay.
And I'm only 17. I was wondering, is there an age limit I have to get in there?
Yeah, 17's too young. Sorry, man.
Why? Oh, because you serve alcohol in that?
What's that?
You serve alcohol or something? Or?
Yes, we do.
Oh, but do you have like DJs in there and that, or?
No, we have a band.
Oh man. How old do I have to be?
You have to be 21, sir.
All right, thanks a lot, man.
All right, thanks.
Rock on.
Hey, Rock.
Yeah, I was wondering if you had a band that you could play on the air, the CD.
What'd you say? I didn't understand you. What?
I'm sorry. I want to hear a band, a song by this band called Horace.
What's the name of the band?
Horace.
Spell it.
Horris. I don't know if you'd have. I wanted to see if you had it because it was kind of, I guess, underground, you could say.
Okay, I'll take a look and see if we have anything.
All right, if you can, I'd like to hear Gas Man. It's a good song.
All right, thanks.
Yeah, thank you.
Chinese Kitchen.
Yes, I was wondering if you were hiring.
Hello?
Hello? I was wondering if you were hiring. Hello?
Max is calling.
And I was wondering if you're hiring, if you guys any job applications?
No, we don't. We're not hiring right now.
Oh, okay. Well, thank you anyway.
Bye.
Bye.
Hi, 99X.
Hi. I just wanted to let you guys know that you guys got a great show. I'm a following fan and a listener.
Oh, wow, that's great.
I was wondering, I feel kind of foolish, but is there any way that, is there like a way I can get autographs for that by DJs?
Oh, why don't you, I don't know what the policy is, but if you want, you can direct that question and anything like that to the regular business office. It's kind of a short staff on the weekends, so I don't know what the policy is on stuff like that. We're flattered though to hear that.
Well, I'm a loyal fan. When I get for school in the morning, I'll turn the car on and I'll listen to Bob and Sherry. Afternoon, I listen to the afternoon show around 2 o'clock. I'm a loyal fan.
Kurt's great. But that would be the best bet. I'll make mention of it, but I don't know what they, I don't know if they've ever had a question like that posed. But we'll find out, okay?
Okay, and I had one more question. Could I request a song?
Yeah, what's that?
Could you play like Gary Newman?
Say who?
Gary Newman?
I can't quite quite understand that.
Can you play Gary Newman from like the guy from the 80s who sings Cars?
Okay, sec.
Huh?
Wait a second. Speak away from the phone a little bit.
Okay. Could you play Gary Newman the song Cars?
Oh, okay. I'll try.
Okay, you take care of yourself.
All right, thanks. All right,
bye.
Bye.
Wow. Special. Fun. Great memories. That was a very fun podcast to edit and listen to. Next week, we have the Beavis and Butthead collector, my man Sean from upstate New York, who I reconnected with at an Aquabat show. He has a very popular Instagram with rare Beavis and Butthead merchandise, and he's starting a podcast, but he is like a huge Beavis and Butthead historian, South Park historian, noise musician, and I love talking to this dude. So tune in next week for that. Patreon.com/MC Lars. Spider-Man track, Doctor Strange track, the Bible LP is dropping. I love you all. You all mean a lot to me. Let me tell you what's happening during the week. The podcast drops today, Monday, of course. Tomorrow, 27th Street, Tuesday. Wednesday, typically I'll try to drop something on YouTube. Thursday, Throwback Thursday. Like last week I showed something from my John Brown biopic, me burning the Confederate flag, holler. Friday, Freestyle Friday. And then I'll try to drop something on Spotify. Saturday, we're chilling, but the Mount Nerdcore streams are coming back. Sunday is Sunday Switch Day. That's what's up. Let's see if I can keep up with this deluge of content in the quarantine. I'll see y'all later. Have a good week. Thank you. And thanks for everyone for your Father's Day wishes. It was my first Father's Day, and I got to hang out with Atlas, got to have some crepes, got to have some sushi, got to go jogging, got to play Doom for an hour and a half on Twitch. It was freaking a great Father's Day. Got to hold my little boy while he screamed in my ear for 20 minutes. Shout out to Ash Wednesday. She's the greatest mom ever, and I love her to death. And I am very grateful for our time with this little guy. Okay, see y'all next week. Beavis and Butthead Collector. Peace. Oh, by the way, it's MC Lars.